All right, today we're going to dive into an idea that is, well, it's pretty challenging. What if our entire concept of nonviolence is just wrong? We're going to explore a really counterintuitive argument that suggests maybe we've been looking at it backwards this whole time.
So let's just get right to the heart of it with this question. Is nonviolence actually just a different flavor of violence, a more subtle strategic kind? The argument we're digging into today says, yeah, pretty much. And to see why, we have to totally blow up our old definitions and start fresh. So to really get what's going on here, we have to start with the most basic piece of the puzzle, a new definition for a very key term. And honestly, this definition is the foundation for everything else we're about to talk about. Okay, so in this framework, violence isn't just about causing physical harm or injury. Nope. It's defined as any action that messes with your opponent's ability to function normally. The key isn't the pain, it's the disruption. That's a huge shift in thinking.
This makes things that seem totally different, like letting the air out of a tire, shutting off the power, or even just publicly shaming someone, all part of the same category. They don't have to hurt a person's body, but they absolutely disrupt their day, their plans, their operations. Under this new rulebook, they all count as acts of violence.
So now that we've got that new definition of violence locked in, we can tackle the really mind-bending part, this central paradox. The idea that for nonviolence to actually work, it has to be backed up by the ability to be incredibly violent.
And this quote really says it all, doesn't it? The argument is that nonviolent tactics are only effective when the other side looks at you and thinks, wow, they could cause some serious damage, but they're choosing not to. It's the threat that's lurking under the surface, not the lack of one, that gets results. Think about it like this. You've got the diplomat versus the militant. A good diplomat, in this view, doesn't pretend they're powerless. They basically put all their weapons on the table, metaphorically speaking, to show the other side the high price of not playing ball. That's the total opposite of a militant, who's all about hiding their strength until the last second.
So what this means is that your opponent isn't giving in because you've appealed to their better nature. Not at all. They're giving in because they are straight up terrified of what you could do if things go sideways. The real motivation here isn't compassion, it's fear. Fear of what happens if things escalate. But what about the other side of this? Let's talk about what happens when nonviolence is used by people who are genuinely powerless. The source material calls this pure nonviolence, and it has a lot to say about it. Now, it's really important to get this. Pure nonviolence isn't being framed here as some kind of moral high ground. It's just a strategic description. It means you're in a position where you literally can't cause any real pain or disruption to your opponent. You just don't have the muscle.
And this probably looks a lot like what we picture when we think of nonviolence, right? Just sitting quietly with a protest sign or, asking your neighbor nicely to turn down their music. Because there's no real disruption, no credible threat behind it, the source lumps these into the pure nonviolence category. You might be thinking, but wait, sometimes small powerless groups do win, and the source has an answer for that. It says, yeah, sometimes a cause succeeds because it has an aesthetic appeal. Think of a viral video of someone rescuing a kitten. But these moments are seen as rare exceptions, and they only work when it costs the powerful almost nothing to give in. They don't really challenge the main rule about power.
Okay, so this whole strategy of being powerful but choosing peace might sound effective, but it is definitely not presented as some kind of perfect answer. The source is super clear that if you build your strategy on a foundation of fear, there are some really big, unavoidable costs. Let's just walk through the three big ones. First off, people will fear you, not love you. Simple as that. Second, your influence is totally dependent on your strength. The second you lose that ability to cause harm, you're done. Your power vanishes. And third, and this is a big one, this whole approach just leaves behind a ton of bitterness and resentment, which makes finding any real, lasting peace way, way harder down the road. So all of this leads to a pretty bleak conclusion about when you should actually use violence, at least in this framework. Because of all those downsides, it's a terrible tool for just getting what you want in a negotiation. It's supposedly best saved for only two things: either getting rid of an opponent completely, or creating an example so terrifying that nobody else ever messes with you again. It's pretty grim. And that's where this leaves us. After going through this whole framework where nonviolence only really works if it's got a violent threat backing it up, we're left with a really fundamental question to chew on. If peace can only be maintained by the threat of force, then what even is peace?